Hello again, YouTube. This might be a sight that many of you have been dreading if you try to watch all of my videos or anything crazy like that. But we're doing another cooking video. It's going to be long, it's going to be epic, just like the last one. Only this time we are making cheesecake. Right. So, we're starting off making the crust, and I have to reheat the oven, which I probably should have done before I turned on the video. But hang on one second. Also figured I'd grab a mixing bowl while I'm over there. It's little mistakes like that remind you that I do this completely improv. So, we've got a springform pan. This is what you use for making a cheesecake, as well as potentially other things, but I've never seen anything else that you use a springform pan for. And we're going to grease it. I just use plain old cooking spray from the store brand. And I'll get the job done. Okay. So, we are looking at, one second again. Need a chopstick to level things off, as before. Okay, so we need a cup of flour. I don't know if anyone actually watched my whole last one through, but if you do end up watching this entire video, make sure to post a comment or something that says, I watched the whole thing, or something like that, so that I know that people actually watch this. But trust me, you're more than welcome to just turn it off, because it's probably going to be at least as long, if not longer than the last one. The last one, as I said, pretty epic. Okay, so we've run out of flour in one bag, so we're opening another bag. This is the King Arthur unbleached all-purpose flour that my mom suggests. Okay, so blowing off the flour, we have a cup of flour. Okay, then we need a half cup of butter or stick margarine, softened. I've been letting this sit out for a little while, so it's pretty soft. And one stick is a half a cup, as it says on the packaging with most margarines and butters. So, there's a half cup. A quarter cup of sugar. Third cup. Quarter cup. Once again, leveling things off. And sugar. The last thing we need for the crust is a large egg yolk. Not a whole egg, just a yolk. They do make a little thing for yolking an egg, but I don't have one, so I do it with a spoon. And I'm going to have to do it over the sink. So hang on just a second, and we'll move the camera over there. Okay, we are now in the kitchen, and hoping to yolk some eggs. This is a somewhat tricky process, and I don't know if there's an easier way to do it than the way I do it, but this is the way that I do it. If anyone has any suggestions for better ways, then feel free to let me know. Okay, so we break the egg into a bowl, Now, believe it or not, the trickiest part is not keeping the yolk intact, because that is actually relatively easy. The trickier part is separating the yolk from the part of the egg that surrounds it. I never knew this, but there's a whole bunch of liquid that will go away nice and easily. I don't know. Yeah. But then there's some stuff surrounding the yolk that just kind of sticks with it. So I usually kind of cut and scoop it away. It's this outer membrane that's holding in even more, whatever the word is for the part of the egg that's not yolk. Okay. And we can probably get that a little bit better. But for the most part, there you have it. A yolked egg. Now I won't show you doing that 3 times in a row, even though I need 3 yolks. But that was the basic idea. And I just broke that yolk, so we're just going to have to call the rest of that egg white acceptable. Except for that little bit there. So yeah, we only need 1 yolk for this part of the recipe. I'm going to go ahead and yolk the other 2 off camera, but that's how I do it. Okay, see you back over at the table. Okay, we are back with our egg yolk, and that is all going down in there. Probably would have been better if it stayed intact, but at least it stayed intact long enough to separate it from the white. It obviously isn't going to be intact once I start mixing it, so I figure it's probably alright. Okay, so we're now mixing it up. It actually says to mix all ingredients with a fork until the dough forms. So that's why I'm using a fork. And I happen to know from experience that this can take a little while. So this time I'm going to be considerate, unlike last time, and turn off the camera while I'm mixing. So just know that I'm mixing, and eventually, if you can see that, yes, a dough will form. And as if by magic, we suddenly have a big old ball of dough. I started out using a fork, but have obviously switched to kneading it with my hands because it's much easier. Okay, so the next instruction on here is to take apart the pan and spread roughly 1/3 of the dough onto the bottom of the pan. So, we kind of get the dough to the point where we can see. And what I like to do, because I'm anal about these things, is to try to actually make 3 approximately even balls with dough. Trying to get a feel for be about even. Okay, so that's about even. So I'm going to take one of those balls, I don't care about the other 2, and I spread that evenly on the bottom of the pan. I don't know if you can actually see. I'm spreading that out with my fingers. Just getting a little messy is fun sometimes. As long as there's a sink nearby to wash your hands off. Yeah, okay. I'm a bit anal about this kind of thing, too, but I am cool with getting stuff all over my fingers, as long as there's a way to wash them off. And it's a little bit difficult near the edges to keep everything even. You have to kind of look for places where there's more dough and push that towards places where there's less dough. But eventually, you end up at the bottom of the pan totally covered in dough. Hopefully going all the way to the edge. Okay. So it then says to place on cookie sheet and bake 8 to 10 minutes until golden brown. The oven has been preheating for quite long enough, so we should be able to just pop this on a cookie sheet and pop that in, which I won't take the camera over to show you. Instead, we'll turn it back on in 8 to 10 minutes, and this will be the bottom of a crust. See you then. Okay, we're back, and we have a cooked bottom crust. So, next step in this process is to reassemble the pan. And voila! You now have an assembled pan with the crust in the bottom of it. So, our next step is to press remaining dough 2 inches up the side of the pan. So, we take the rest of this dough, and we can kind of divide it up because I found that, again, spreading it all the way around is kind of difficult to get it all even. So if you kind of break the dough into a few pieces, you can spread a little bit easier. I feel like I should be talking for this part. I think a lot of the point of this whole taking the pan apart, baking some of it, and then putting it back together thing, which seems a little bit silly, is that I guess you want the bottom baked a little bit better, but also the heat wouldn't otherwise get to the bottom. But you know how when you have cheesecake, the bottom seems to have a bit of a different texture than the sides, and that's not because of it being a different thing, because as you can see from this process, it's the exact same dough going into both. It's just cooked different amounts of times and assembled separately. And I don't know if you can hear that, but people outside are honking their horns randomly for no really good reason. Okay. I'm in a little bit of a rush with this cheesecake because I have been lazy and haven't done my laundry lately, and it's kind of been building up, so I'm hoping to get that done during part of the cooling process. Okay, it appears my battery ran out at some point, and I'm honestly kind of too lazy to check when it ran out, and I couldn't really show you what I did anyway. So, quick recap, in case you didn't see. I spread out the remaining 2/3 of the dough along the sides here, up about 2 inches. And some of it might be a little bit high, but it's probably cool. So, the next part involves an electric mixer. And cream cheese, which is what I was showing you when I realized it had run out. I used this stuff that has 1/3 the fat of original cream cheese. I don't actually know how to pronounce it, but that is the word Neufcha with a little triangle Tel. So if you know how to pronounce that, awesome. But yes, this stuff comes, once again, highly recommended by my mom, and it works as a substitute for cream cheese in pretty much every sense of the word. Tastes awesome, and less fat, less calories. Which, since I'm trying to lose this gut, is a nice plus. So, my electric mixer, unfortunately, is a little small. Last time I made a cheesecake, I made it in this, so it will get the job done. But, all in all, if you have a bigger electric mixer, you're gonna be better off than I am. Okay, so, just like cream cheese, or just like block cream cheese, it comes in these wrappers. And in order to get all of the cream cheese off, or else we want it to be the cheesiest it can be, we can scrape the foil with a spoon. Which we will kind of mix with a bit later. Okay. And yeah, we've got 5 of these. They are 8-ounce packages, as it recommends. It's a very standard cream cheese size for bricks of cream cheese or this Neufcha cheese. And it actually even says around the recipe 5 8-ounce packages of cream cheese, so that's how standard it is. That was one thing I noticed when I was making pie. I was making a raspberry pie, which, for those who don't know, I sure didn't, is raspberries and blackberries. And when it was talking about quantities, it just wanted 2 bags of berries. So I go to the grocery store expecting there's just going to be one pretty standard size and I can just use that size. But not only were there different sizes, but there weren't even a raspberry and a blackberry bag that were the same amount of raspberry and blackberry. So, after searching for several more recipes, I finally concluded, since all of them said that it couldn't be terribly important exactly how much berry was in there. And it turned out I was pretty much right, because I just picked up 2 fairly standard-looking store-brand bags of berries, took them home, cooked the pie, and everyone loved the pie. So, there's a little pie lesson for you, that exact measurements don't matter as much for pies. It kind of makes sense, since generally, especially if you're doing it with fresh fruit, you know, you're not really going to measure that kind of thing as well. People might say something like, put 5 apples in the pie. Well, what's the standard amount of apple in an apple? Every apple is different. So, you know, obviously with pies, much like with bananas, as I mentioned in my banana bread video, it doesn't matter so much the size. So, if any of you are out there making a pie, or planning to make a pie, and you're confused by this as well, you can rest assured that, at least if it just says something like 1 bag, you don't have to necessarily worry so much about how much is in that bag. Okay, I realize this must be a terribly boring process, but we are on the next to last thing of cream cheese. And I'm trying to at least ramble about something while I do it, so you've got something to keep yourself occupied. A lot of people have told me that when they're watching my videos, they will really just listen and go off and do other things. And I can definitely recommend that for things like this. You know, the cooking part is a little bit visual, but I'm dictating everything I'm doing. And you can always glance over and, if absolutely necessary, rewind to see what I actually did. Assuming what I actually did is visible on the screen, because I can't see what the camera sees, so I don't even know which part of this whole process is in the frame. But obviously this particular part is fairly self-explanatory. Just open and cream cheese things. Dumping in the cream cheese into the mixer, or the bowl of the mixer, rather. Feels a little weird saying into the mixer. Makes it sound like it's a blender or something. And then scraping it, which makes that sound you can probably hear. It's always a little weird how sounds come across on videos, but it's possible that sound is terribly annoying, and I apologize for this case. Okay, so, cream cheese. Finally inside. Then we have sugar, flour, orange peel, lemon peel, and salt. Okay. So, sugar, we've got 1 3/4 cups of it, which, let me tell you, is a pretty significant amount of sugar. That was one thing that kind of shocked me when I first did this recipe. I was like, that looks like too much sugar, but it's not. It's a lot of the right amount of sugar. I mean, it is a cake, so it's supposed to be sweet, right? Okay, so there's a cup of sugar. Pour that in there. And then we need 3/4. So I've got a 1/4 cup. And then off in the kitchen, my 1/2 cup measuring cup. I'm starting to run low on sugar, but I think I can get by this time. There we go. Okay, so a lot of sugar's in there. I don't know if you can see, but the mixer is looking rather full already. But luckily those are the biggest ingredients. Then we have 3 tablespoons of flour. Now 3 tablespoons is not a lot, especially for something with flour. In most recipes you see lots of flour, but this isn't really a bready type recipe. obviously the dough is very bready, which is why we used a cup of it. But for this one, it's much more creamy. I'm assuming you've had cheesecake. If you haven't, you need to go have some now. But assuming you have, you know that the middle is really not very cake-like at all. It's just kind of like a filling, almost more like a pie, except open-topped. Okay, so then, orange peel and lemon peel. Let me go grab my orange and my lemon and wash it. I don't actually keep much fresh fruit around the apartment, so when I make this I actually go out and buy an orange and a lemon. They're not terribly expensive, so I don't feel too bad. And it's extra important to wash them in this case because normally the peel just gets taken off and not eaten. In this case we're actually eating the peel itself. So this is definitely not an exact science, but it calls for about a tablespoon of each if desired, it says. You can kind of eyeball what a tablespoon looks like and just kind of shred that in there. I've got here a cheese grater, which I did not have before. Before I just had a peeler. And it looks like we need to go coarser. And the idea of this is to kind of give it a hint of a citrusy flavor to it without, you know, really overpowering it. My mom likes to go a little bit stronger on the lemon and not even use orange. It ends up being, you know, actually tastably lemony cheesecake. But with just this little hint of it, I think it comes out a little bit more generic cheesecake tasting, and in my humble opinion, tastes a little bit better. I think the extra lemon is something she's added over the years, because I don't remember it tasting as lemony as it did when she made it more recently. So anyway, that is that. The next step is where we begin blending it. And I'm probably going to turn the camera off for that part because it's monotonous and loud, and those are two things that probably should not be in a YouTube video. So, just know that we do it on medium speed for about 1 minute or until smooth. And I'll see you in about 1 minute. Or until smooth. Okay, it has become fairly smooth. Sorry, just checking what you were seeing. So, next thing wants to do is to continue beating things in. The next thing, well, the next few things we beat in are those egg yolks, which are over here, and probably settled more than they should have. But they will still enter into the mix. And eventually everything will mix just fine because most of the things we're adding now are more liquidy. So the blender will have them, the mixer rather, will have a much easier time mixing with all of these liquidy things in there. Okay, so those are the 2 egg yolks. Then it calls for 5 eggs. And I unfortunately only have 1 real egg left. There we go. Which I will put in there. But then, after I get the egg off of got this organic egg substitute stuff, which, again, is supposed to be healthier. You may notice a trend. So, it says that 4 large eggs is approximately a third a cup plus 1 tablespoon. I don't know why it mixes up measurement things there, but a tablespoon is 15 milliliters, and a fourth of a cup is 60 milliliters, so, no, whatever. We're just going to pour this in here to a third of a cup. Pour this in a third of a cup, and then, there it is, 1 tablespoon. So, go ahead and use this thing, and that should be fine. Okay, and then the last thing we need is a quarter cup of whipping cream, and I'll be right back with that. So here we have whipping cream, 1/2 pint of it, and we want, which I believe is about a 1/2 cup, so I want half the carton or so, maybe less. But whatever the case, a quarter cup, and it's only a quarter of the carton. That goes in there. Now that should start blending a lot easier, and once again I will turn the camera off to blend this all together. It says to whip on low speed until blended. So, low speed until blended, here we come. Okay, we now have whipped cheesecake stuff. Obviously, you probably noticed at some point during this whole thing that a rubber spatula entered into the equation. These are great for when you're using an electric mixer, making sure to get the stuff on the edges of the mixing process and putting them into the middle of it. Just kind of a motion like that to move the stuff on the outside into the insides to make sure everything gets mixed. It'll also be helpful for this pouring bit. So, this will be one of the last exciting cooking, like mixing, poury type parts. The actual interacting with the baked good rather than just turning dials and such. And that is to pour it into the crust. As you may recall, we have a groundwork of already baked crust, along with a side, a wall, if you will, of unbaked crust. And we're just pouring this whole cheesy mixture into it. And it looks delicious. Not sure how many calories of this are sitting there in those mixer, whatever they're called. You know what I mean, these things. But we might have to give those a good licking. And if I look at the scale tomorrow morning and it says I've gained weight, then clearly there were several calories in them. Numerous calories. This whole thing is still, even though I've taken a few precautions to make it a little bit healthier, it's still quite a beast when it comes to calories. I did the math, and the whole thing we're looking at about almost 6,000 calories in the whole cake, which is why I'm going to cut it into eighths or possibly even sixteenths when serving it, because the 16th we're only looking at a little over 350 calories. That's a reasonable amount, for a dessert, especially when fitting that into a 2,000 calorie diet as I am. That's doable. If I eat really lightly the rest of the day, I can even have an eighth of the cake, which is like 730 calories. Okay, so enough calorie talk. We are now putting the pan in and baking for 15 minutes. Since I'm vacating this general vicinity, I can take the camera off of its little perch that I put it on, and you can accompany the cake to the kitchen in real time. Okay. We open up a nice hot oven and carefully put the cake into the oven. Timer goes to 15 minutes. Oops. Come on. Okay. And now we wait. So, the cheesecake is baking. I just realized I forgot something. I don't know how important it is, but I forgot the salt. There's supposed to be a quarter teaspoon? I think a quarter teaspoon. A quarter teaspoon of salt is supposed to be in that cheesecake over there. It's supposed to go in the middle filling part, and it's already too far into baking to really help it. So, we're going to hope that that isn't an extremely fundamental part of it, because if it is, I'm going to have a terrible cheesecake. And if it is, I'm sorry, Cal, and I'll make you another one. But I'm not going to make another one tonight, just in case it is fine tasting. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But if you're, for some strange reason, using this video to make a cheesecake, remember the salt, because it's in the recipe. It can't be unimportant. I'll let you know how it turns out. And I'll also let you know when it's done baking 15 minutes. Okay. Okay, so this next step isn't terribly exciting, but I figured I'm filming all the other steps, so here we go. Timer ends. We reduce the temperature to 200 degrees. 200. And then we cook it for another hour. Not hour and 15 minutes. Okay, 1 hour. So yeah, I'll see you again in an hour. And eventually we'll find out if this cheesecake is totally ruined. Bye. Okay, we are just about at the end of that hour. And now we have another completely unexciting step, where we turn the oven completely off and let it cool again in the oven for a half hour. Did I mention this recipe was long? But yeah, that is one of the nice parts. It actually tells you to let it cool in the oven. So, you can, sorry, once it's time to finally actually take it out of the oven, it'll be pretty well cooled down, and you don't have to worry about that whole trying to get it out with pot holders and stuff. So if you're the kind of person that reaching into a hot oven frightens you, then maybe this is the recipe for you. Anyway, see you in a half hour. Okay. We finally get to do something that doesn't involve pushing buttons and stuff. Yeah, it's relatively, it's still a little bit warm. So we're going to snatch that. It isn't really that hot anymore because it's been cooling in there for 30 minutes. But now, you can take it out, and we can see it is looking very cheesecake-like. So at this point, it now has to cool. The directions say to put it on a wire rack somewhere free of drafts. Unfortunately, the oven burner on top of the oven is the closest place I have. And it says to let it cool for another 30 minutes. So once again, we have a nice long wait for it to continue its cooling process. You may have gathered, this is a rather extensive process. I'll see you in another 30 minutes. And we're back again as the timer runs out. So the next step in this extended cheesecake cooling process is to run a metal spatula like this one. You can probably just use a butter knife if you are lacking in metal spatulas. And to run that along the edge, as I am doing and not filming very well because I'm more focused on doing it, and my cat is chasing his tail below me. That might be more interesting. Okay, short break. Now we're back to this, where we are running a metal spatula. And it seems to be separating fairly nicely. Again, I'm doing horrible filming with this. Sorry about that. Okay. We have run a metal spatula along it. And now, it gets popped in the fridge uncovered. This will be the next to last step, because it stays in there uncovered for 3 hours. This is where the part where my timer jumps ahead suddenly comes in handy. 3 hours. So, since it is now 10 o'clock, it will be 1 a.m. when I can finally do the last step of this and go to bed. I have gotten a lot of cleanup done. The table's all clear, and I even did a few dishes. So, yeah. See you in 3 hours. Okay. It is now, as you can see, 1 a.m. I need to go to bed. But first, it's time to cover up this cheesecake. Thanks for sticking with me. I know it feels a lot longer for me than it feels for you because it's been, 6-7 hours making this for me and not for you. But yes. The basic idea for those following along at home is you cover it with, say, plastic wrap. I don't know if that is a good view of me or not, but you cover it with plastic wrap and put it back in the fridge for at least 9 hours. That's why this is a 15-hour project. And the recipe also says no more than 48 hours. So you have to eat it before that, or something. But obviously, if you need to save it for longer than that, you do. But since this cheesecake is for tomorrow, it will be eaten before then. Unless that lack of salt makes it taste horrible, in which case it will not be eaten ever. But I mentioned it to Cal, and she knows a great deal about a great deal of things, and she said that she didn't think the lack of salt would be a big deal. So, we're hoping she's right, because it's her birthday cake. And again, if it doesn't turn out alright, I'll make her another one with salt this time. So there it is, all covered up in plastic wrap, and I am headed to bed. Night night.